Doing the video from the wife's car. I'm at the basketball practice, so while Freddie's in there doing the basketball practice, I figured we would come out here and talk about how Trump will not do it. He will not end the central banking system. He will continue on using the debt-based currency system just like all the previous administrations, even though he talks about freedom and talks about, how bad the Federal Reserve is and talks up a big game, but he will definitely use the Federal Reserve to his advantage because that's how the system operates, and there's very little doubt in my mind that that's going to change. So when we think about what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing for the president, when he's doing it for the country, when they're doing it for the people, we think about what it is that the Federal Reserve is up to. A lot of people just break it down to money printing. That's it. They just think money printing is it. That's all the Federal Reserve does. That's their entire game. And it goes a little deeper than that. Like, we have to really think, like, what is it that the Federal Reserve is up to when it comes to monetary policy, not only here for the United States, but then also to consider that they are the custodian of the world reserve currency, right? So now I think about the Federal Reserve and what it is that they are performing for providing liabilities to the world out there. It makes it very difficult for the Federal Reserve to do these two functions of not only dealing with monetary policy here for the United States and our economy, but then also sitting in a situation in which that they have to provide the world with the safe and liquid, or the liabilities that is ultimately backing the safe and liquid assets of the U.S. Treasuries, or maybe vice versa from that. The U.S. Treasuries backing the Federal Reserve. I don't know. How would you look at that? One IOU for another IOU. I don't know which one would be better. I find both of them are essentially going to be the same thing when you think about what it is that they are doing with these two. One of them is a liability. The other one, or a liability of the Federal Reserve, the other one's a liability of the United States government. Either way, if the government is going to go into deficit spending, if they are going to be issuing out bonds, if they are going to be there to spend the money at will without necessarily taxing the people to do it, they are not going to be able to necessarily easily do that without the Federal Reserve itself. So it's very little doubt in my mind that Donald Trump is going to take the position in which that, hey, I'm not going to go into debt and I'm not going to be spending money and I'm going to tax the people for all the projects that I have intended. I just don't think those are the words he's going to be using. And then on top of it, when you think about what it is that it would take in order to end the Fed, I don't hear anything, not a single thing coming from anybody within the government at all since Ron Paul talking about ending the Fed. Like, not in any kind of serious fashion, not one that actually gets the attention of the people. Ron Paul was the last person out there who even came close to conducting themselves in a way that would actually have the attention going to the Federal Reserve that would end the Fed. Now, that's not something that is going to be easily done, and I don't think that there's going to be anything that can possibly replace it. So I don't theorize on the idea of ending the Fed, even though that would be the correct position if somebody truly loved the American people and truly didn't want them to go deeper into debt and truly understood that if there was a currency that was based around gold or a limitation that wouldn't allow government to just go deficit spending or rampant spending and doing the things that they are doing today, they would be held accountable because of the limitation of the currency that they would have, which would essentially be how much gold that they could hold. So now I think about this, I don't find that there's going to be any difference coming not only from this administration or from the previous ones that is going to conduct themselves in a way that doesn't most use the Fed for their advantage. Like, that's just going to be the way it is. There's going to be more debt, more currency issuance, more separation between the rich and the poor, and I don't care how you look at this or how you conduct yourself. If you bring new money into the system, this is how it goes down. So it's just better to understand it for what it is. That way we can see it as it comes. There is no savior. There is nobody coming who is going to come in and say, hey, I've got it all figured out, so every single person out there is going to be super stoked, happy, successful, all that other stuff. Like, that doesn't go down like that. It's not the way it works. It's best to understand it for yourself so that you can make the most appropriate, best decisions for yourself. This is not a game. This is not something that is meant to be fair. Like a lot of people say, oh, that isn't fair. You know, and it was like, fair for who? Fair for what? There is no fair. There's no fair in this game. This is survival of the fittest. And if you don't understand it, then you're going to end up failing, wondering why it is that you didn't succeed, why it is that you're blaming externals out there, very much like what we are seeing today as people are blaming externals on their horrible conditions of their life, even though very little has changed over the last few days or months, or really, even if you think about it, even the last couple of years, we have become very accustomed to what it is that what it is that is going on, not only within the economy, but also what's going on with government. Are we going to see some drastic changes coming from the new administration? Yeah, I bet we will. I bet we will. We're probably going to see some serious changes, not only to the way that the administration conducts tariffs, or the idea of how it is that they are going to tax corporations in an attempt to try and bring manufacturing back to the United States. Now, can they try and slow the tide? I mean, sure. Is there even ways that you can make it appear that there is an actual improvement on the conditions? I wouldn't be surprised if there is. But when you know that you're going against the economic forces, that of the Cantillon effect, where you see the actual evidence of it happening, the governments would not be conducting themselves like they do if it wasn't for the underlying economic conditions. People want to think that it's the government that's doing that. That's not the case. What they are doing is they are reacting. Think about it. All these tariffs that are coming are promised. What are they for? It's because we don't have a manufacturing base. It's because we are importing all the items that we should be manufacturing for ourselves. So if that condition wasn't in existence, then there would be no need to tariff. Right? The underlying economic condition happens first, and then the governments react to this situation. I even found somebody within the comment section saying, oh no, the rich are doing it. And it was just like, what? You blame this external? Like, you see the evidence of it happening right here in front of you. You see the separation between the rich and the poor. You're realizing that a good job sucks, and you're saying, oh, it's the rich's fault. Well, okay. You're finding the symptom of it, right? They have all the money and you have nothing. They're diving into luxuries and it's their fault. Okay. Well, now that we've got that part out of the way, which is just a small little insignificant part of the grand picture of it, which is that the new money that pours into the system doesn't go into buying production. It doesn't go into savings. That's what builds a strong economy, is production and savings. I mean, you guys heard me talk about the beer and saws analogy. When you borrow money and you buy beer, what do you think you get from that? You get entertainment, you get distribution, you get agriculture, manufacturing, and you also end up drinking the product and it's gone. And if you borrow money to buy beer, you're going to end up having to work with a hangover to pay for that past consumption. That is the position that the United States is in. Now, had we moved into saws, we would have had to work those saws, cut up lumber, fashion together a product, sell that product off, do that over and over again until we have paid off the saws, and now we can buy as many beers as we want. Right? See, the idea that we move into production is not the easiest one to move into when you're already drunk off of the beer. Now we have to work with the hangover for a very long time. When people say, how do you fix the system? You're gonna fix the system by putting your kids into a position in which that they will not enjoy luxuries, but they will be working twice as hard as you did to pay off the debts that we have accumulated. And they're going to have to do that for their entire life and not enjoy any of it with a higher standard of living, and maybe even have to put your grandkids or your great grandkids through this situation. Like, does that sound fun? Of course it doesn't. There's no fun in this game. It's not fair. So it's better to understand it for this fashion, and that way you can best appropriately position yourself. There is plenty of opportunity out there. That's the thing that most people, I just don't think, like, even go to look at. They don't think that there's opportunity. The opportunity doesn't lie in your day job. Your day job might pay the bills, but it's not going to do anything for you in your life. It'll get you through the bill paying part of it. It might squeeze out a tiny retirement if you're really lucky. But as far as pushing you into the better way of life, that higher standard of living, If you want that sort of experience in your life, you're going to have to push harder than you have ever thought that you were going to have to push, because it's not just the day job, it's also running the side hustles. It's also pushing your money into the proper investments to become the capitalist or the real estate owner or landlord or property owner in whatever fashion you can manage to figure that part out. And this is the way that it goes down. Like, you don't blame it on administrations. You don't count on the administration. They're not going to do it for you. Only you're going to do it for you. I can't stress this enough. I really can't. As much as I have looked into as many conspiracy theories, New World Order, trying to understand as much as I can, and there was a time that I was very much involved in politics, I realized that following all that stuff made very little benefit to my life. The moment that I gave it all up and started following the money and thought to myself, whatever it is that I do is my decisions and I have to deal with the decisions that I make. Once I came to that realization and started motivating myself to try and do better and chase excellence, that's when my whole life changed. I gave up politics and my life got better. Right? And I think that's what most people should do. I'm not saying just ignore it altogether. All I guess I'm saying is that if you are going to rely on that external, you are going to suffer in misery. Right? Because just look at the people who do. I've never seen as many upset, negative comments, as horrible as it has been over the last not only 4 years or even 8 years, but even now. If you want to control the people, you put them in fear, you put them in jealousy, you put them in anxiety, you give them resent, hate, all that stuff. You put all those things together and you can control that. Because low-level vibration behavior, such as that of insults, that of argument, has nothing to do with actual raising of your energy to a higher positive level that can actually receive that of what it is that you truly want in this world. Instead, it's sitting in a negative spot, and it appeals to the negative, and the negative then feeds off of it. And then you wonder, you look around, and you're like, man, look at the world. It's just full of shit. And I'm thinking, yeah, it is, because that's the way you believe it, right? And then you see it for what it is, and you see it as that. Once you change your view of it, once you realize, man, it's not their responsibility, it's my responsibility. It's my responsibility to deal with myself and conduct myself in a way that I feel is most appropriate. If you don't like the idea that there is all this foreign import coming in, stop buying foreign import. How hard is that? Nobody's going to do it because American-made products are too damn expensive. And I'm not saying they're too damn expensive. What I'm saying is they're too damn expensive. Right? That's what it comes down to. If we had our abilities to then buy our own manufacturing and keep it going, we would be fine. But we're not in that position. We have moved beyond that. We are in a position in which that the foreign products that come in is sustaining our ways of life, our higher standard of living. We could have made the decision way back in the 50s and 60s to say, hey, no, we're not going to buy that foreign production. No, we're not going to advance our standard of living. We're going to continue to be producers and savers, and we're going to hold that position, and we're going to teach our children not to dive into luxuries, and we're going to keep America truly great. That was our opportunity. It's been missed. It's gone. That doesn't exist. We're not going back to it without pain and misery. So again, like, why are you blaming the other people out there when you can internalize this stuff for yourself and say, okay, I can make a good decision. I know that there's people out there who are absolutely killing it, and I can be one of those people. I can figure that thing out, and I don't care who's up there trying to be the boss. I'm going to continue to operate and behave in a way that I know is best and most appropriate for me. And this is the way that it's going to end up being successful for people. All right, dude, I'm from range. Let me cruise back up here. Thanks for having so many people. We got 295 with 58 likes. Go continue to hit that like button. We're 15 minutes into this video, and we're just kind of going off about the Federal Reserve, central banking, and how it is that you're supposed to conduct yourself. As a young person, I like cheap things regardless of the country. Laugh my ass off. Yeah, people, let's see. Yeah, America should never been allowed to outsource their corporations. I don't think that's like, okay, see, that's the exact argument that people would use to say, hey, we should never outsource this thing. Well, that is denying you the ability to be to be free, right? To make your own free market decisions, independent freedom, choices, stuff like that. Once you say, hey, no, man, you can't leave, you have to stay, right? That's a very communistic way of looking at it. And that is the only way that you can truly control the idea of what's happening with the Cantillon effect, is to say, hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to put a boot on the foot or a boot on the face of every single person out there to prevent them from actually being able to rise to a higher level of standard of living. Then they're going to go in there and absorb and take all the manufacturing, because really, if you don't do that, then there's going to end up being people who are going to grow and from their manufacturing base become wealthy and start moving into luxuries. Can't have that, right? So you got to take possession of all the manufacturing. You know what this sounds like, right? You see, you hear how this sounds? And this is the only way that you can stop it. Otherwise, the people have to make the decision for themselves. And this is really where it becomes very hard for a lot of people out there, because they want the government to force them to make the decision. No, I can't do this on my own. They need to make me do it. Right? It's like, here's a good way of looking at it. So this is something that I was thinking about: selective service, right? So all males at the age of 18 have to go and register for selective service, which is basically signing up for the draft. And now I thought about it, it was just like, so all men have to do this, but women don't have to do it. Now, what if a woman did want to sign up for selective service? Does that kind of make sense? Like, I mean, why not? If men have to do it, then women should be able to do it. And then I got to think, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. Because if a woman really truly wanted to be in that sort of position of saying that, hey, I want to volunteer to be helping during this particular time, you can just join, right? You can just join. You don't have to be forced to do it. See, selective service isn't something that is just, but it's just not your choice, right? I mean, sure, you can choose, I'm not going to do it, but then you don't get anything of benefits of the American government, right? So all of a sudden, you're not accepted into all the ideas of the social safety nets that are available out there. See, this is a very strange way to kind of look at it, but it's ultimately what is going down here in the United States, is that people don't realize what it is that they are giving up, or what it is that they don't realize that they have, right? You think about the freedoms that you have that is out there that most people don't get. That is one thing that men in this country really don't have the freedom of, is that they don't get the choice to not sign up for selective service unless they just want to deny themselves everything that is American safety net, right? So you start doing this sort of behavior, and you're going to start really controlling the people in a way that they don't want to be controlled. They're going to get pissed. They will. There's no doubt about it. And especially if you had freedom at one point and you lost it, now you're really pissed. See, this is where people have to make the decision for themselves. If we all acted individually in a way that just simply wouldn't allow government to conduct themselves the way they do. Like, if we could figure out a way to make government irrelevant, I would be so down for that. I am more of an anarchist now today than I have ever been. I do not want government in my life at all. And the more I can do to get them out of it, the better I feel. Most people want them in their life. They say, hey, no, come here, go save me for my own self, because I can't make the decisions for myself. Right? These people over here aren't making proper decisions. You got to make them think differently. How many people out there are you hearing this sort of behavior going on right now, and you think, man, look how screwed up this country is? And it was just like, yeah, because not a single one of them is choosing to make a decision for themselves based on what it is that they know. They want the government to tell them to do something, or to tell them to do something, because they're not approving of what it is that they have going on over there. I'll turn that light back on. All right. All Nighter says, I hate government. What are they for? Protect the borders. Yeah, see, this is really where I think, like, I do approve of government when they do some things, right? Protecting the border. Establish trade between the states, right? Making sure that because each state is independent, right? We're all independent states making decisions for ourselves. But if you have a united states, you have to have commerce between these states. There should be some regulation that goes on between them. I think government should be able to be in charge of something of that nature, right? These are the things that are limited to government that I believe that the forefathers were trying to set and say, hey, this is about as close to anarchy as we get, and there's a government for it here. Do you want to try and hold on to that? Right? I mean, the people will be like, okay, well, we better learn this thing if we want to hold on to it. And since most people I know out there couldn't even spit out the Bill of Rights, I doubt they understand anything about the Constitution. You know? I mean, I don't know how many people I've asked if they could spit out the Bill of Rights. Nobody. Like, literally nobody can spit out the Bill of Rights. And I find that to be incredibly, like, scary to think that people are out there voting and they have no idea what their rights are. How could they possibly vote for somebody that's going to help them protect their rights, which the only person who can protect your rights is you? But how could you possibly vote for somebody who is in favor of your personal rights and freedoms if you have no idea what they are? You can't. You just simply can't. And since I know most people couldn't even probably list 3 out of the 10 Bill of Rights, then I can't imagine that there is even a remote chance of having people voting for a president that is going to have their freedoms and constitutional rights in mind. I just don't believe that's going to be the case. I just don't think that's in existence anymore. The Federal Reserve Bank has already proved in its existence for the last 100 years that it is conducting itself outside of the Constitution. Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender in payment of debt. All right? Article 1, Section 10. Go look it up. So now here we have a president who is totally going to use the central banking, which is an unconstitutional organization. Right? Congress voted it in. It shouldn't have ever been allowed by our Constitution. The people should have said, nah, I'm not accepting Federal Reserve notes. No, thank you. Right? What do you have there? You got silver certificates? Okay, that's worked. How about these U.S. Treasury notes? Maybe. Right? I mean, coming from the U.S. Treasury, Congress, whatever, might be. Federal Reserve, central banking, no, not accepting it. Go ahead and put those away. Give me the silver certificates. Give me the change. Right? But I ain't accepting Federal Reserve notes. That's the way the people should have conducted themselves when the Federal Reserve Bank came into existence. But they didn't do that. Not 100 years ago, and they don't do it today. Moving on. All right, I thought we were staying away from politics. Let's talk about Chairman Powell. He says he's not going to quit. Why would he quit? What difference does it make? If you get rid of Powell, right? Even, like, first of all, Trump put Powell in position, right? That was Trump's buddy. You know, Powell and Trump, they're super tight. They're old homies. And they play this game. They totally play this game where they hate each other, right? And it's not reality. This is a total professional wrestling event that is happening right in front of you. These two are giving each other high fives in the background. I guarantee you that. The perfect example of this. Do you really honestly believe Trump, back at the end of his last administration, back in 2000, I think it was around 2019 or so, where he was screaming that he wanted to fire Jerome Powell? You guys remember this? He said that he wanted the Federal Reserve to be printing money and to take interest rates into negative territory, that Germany was doing the right thing by taking interest rates into negative territory. I'm sorry, how's Germany doing today? Just curious. All right. Anyhow, so he thought that Germany was doing a really good thing by going into negative rates and that the Federal Reserve should be going into negative interest rates. Now, I think about what that really means, and it means a whole lot of money printing and a whole lot of expansionary currency going on out there. And when Trump says, yeah, and the rich people in the room know what I'm talking about, I knew right then. It was just like, dude, you love the Fed. You absolutely love the Fed. There is no doubt in my mind that him and the Federal Reserve are like, they're super tight. They're like, man, we got this thing. All right. Now we think about back towards then when he was screaming that stuff out. I want to fire Jerome Powell. I want to get rid of the Fed. Or not get rid of the Fed, but get rid of that chairman, put a new chairman in there, take interest rates into negative territory. They should be listening to me. I'm way smarter than they are. Right. This is what he was saying. Now, when you think about those statements that he was making back then, he said there was no inflation. That lowers the inflation expectation. When you have him out there screaming it as loud as he did, saying there's no inflation, there's no inflation, there's no inflation, right? Again, this is Donald Trump saying this at the end of his administration. That lowers the inflation expectation and raises the real interest rates. That's what the Federal Reserve and the administration was trying to do at the time. They got to a point where they were trying to raise the Fed funds rate, and they got to 2.5%, and they could not go any further. They knew that they had to do something. And so Jerome Powell and Trump together as a team, he comes out, he says, man, I got you, no worries, watch this. There's no inflation. The Fed should be printing money. They don't know what they're doing. Jerome Powell should be fired. Blah, 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 boom, boom, goes down the inflation expectation, and up goes the real interest rates. Right? They're a team. They're working together on this thing. They are not fighting. And so when I think about what it is that we have coming into our future, there's very little doubt in my mind that the right thing is going to be done. We are not going to be doing anything as far as moving backwards in the debt, like paying off the debt. No, that's not going to happen, right? I mean, you might get a little bit of it, like a little symbolic paying off a debt, but there is no paying the debt off. That is not something that is going to happen. And deficit spending is most likely going to continue. And when we think about what it is that they need in order for those two things to conduct themselves with, they need a central banking system like the Federal Reserve. Very little doubt in my mind that's going to change. Right? So as we move forward into this, you know that there is no reversal to it. And you can understand that there is going to be separation between the rich and the poor. And to know that this money flies everywhere and that the ability to get out there and reach out there and grab it is yours to have. Your day job, that high, awesome paying day job you have, it's not enough, because even a good job sucks. You have to do more. You have to do far more than what you have ever done in order to conduct yourself in this, because the separation is going to continue. Right? If you're on the bottom side of the wedge, the younger you are, the better chance you have to get on the other side of the wedge. Use compounding interest to your advantage. You have the coolest thing in the entire world as an investor if you are young and you got time. Right? That's something that most of us just don't have. 48 years old, I don't get to take advantage of time. But if you're young, you're in your 20s, you got time on your side. You know what compounding interest can do for you over time? It is the greatest thing that you could ever have. And being young is the best time that you could ever get into investing, and start early. Right? Know that if you don't do this, you're going to end up on the bottom side of the wedge, and the longer time goes on, the harder it is to get on the other side. It becomes almost impossible. Moving on. Let's see here. Dawn says, Russia doesn't want to take anyone, just do business, something we forgot. All right. Already disappointed in his clearly rhino Zionist lead picks. All-Nighter says, to Bushwhacker's point, a few will be able to make it on peanuts. All right, 40 years old, ain't shit. I'm 52 and planning more investments. Oh, no, I'm not saying you don't invest. What I'm saying is that 48 years old, you don't have the ability to use compounding interest to your advantage. That's something that the young get to use. Right? The younger you are, the better it is. The older you are, the worse it gets. 48 years old, I mean, right about the time that it starts doing well, I'm going to be old man and probably dying. Right? I want to take advantage of that. I want to be in that position now, not in the future. I'm 48. I want to enjoy the rest of the years. Now I have to work hard on them, but that's what I'm going to do. Why not have one world government? Wouldn't that solve everything? M. Rider 777, I think that's probably one of the scariest things that you could ever possibly wish for, is to have a single world government. Who's going to be in control of that? How is it that you control what it is that people are expecting from another nation and their personal, individual way of life comparatively to ours? Like we have individual rights and freedoms. I like owning firearms. Many nations around the world don't let you own firearms. So which one of these nations is going to say, okay, you're going to have to give up your firearms, or you're going to have to go ahead and have firearms? Like, how does this work? I'm an independent American. All right. I am not somebody who lives under the government rule. The government lives under mine. I'm the highest authority. I understand what it is that my rights are. I understand how it is to conduct myself the most appropriate that I feel I can, that keeps authority out of my business. Right? There's some business that I have to do with them. I don't want to mess around with the cop and try to explain to him how it is that I have a right to travel. So I go out and get a driver's license. I pay the insurance on it. I pay my taxes. Right? But I keep most of my money outside of dollars. Right? And that's funny to hear because a lot of people hear me as a strong dollar theorist, because I am. But I don't keep a whole lot of dollars on hand because I don't trust a third party. That's the whole problem, is that I simply don't trust anything else out there except for myself. And this is the only thing that I'm going to put trust in, because everything else out there can be a lie, can be misinterpreted. Everything else out there is an illusion. Nothing out there is true. Nothing out there is real. Everything is an illusion of your imagination and the meaning that you have given it. People are like, man, our whole world's coming to an end because of this election. And I'm thinking, for you, maybe, but not me. I mean, my world doesn't come to an end. I mean, my world's just fine because I didn't give it all the meaning that you did. So as you believe that the whole world, and you got lists and reasons and all kinds of stuff because you've been researched and investigated and dove into it so much now that you know that this president's going to totally ruin your life, what do you really end up with? Right? A meaning that you have put behind it. Hold on one second. Freddie needs something. What's up, bud? Oh, yeah, you got it. You having fun?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Freddie's doing basketball. I came in for a bottle of water. And that's just when you start diving into New World Order stuff, it's not pretty. It's not something that I want to go back into really even thinking about anymore, right? There was a time that's all I used to think about. And I know enough about it now that it's real. It really happens out there. There's definitely a world governance that is trying to, control that of what it is that people do across the globe. There's definite, family fighting. There's all that Illuminati stuff. All these things are real. Like, I hope people truly understand it, that stuff is real. A lot of it is blown way out of proportion and like misinterpreted and like, given a lot of like obscurities or something. I'm not even quite sure how to describe it, because not all of it is like, exactly accurate to what it is that people seem to think it is, but it's definitely happening. Right? And now again, there's nothing you can do to change that. I mean, what are you going to do? The only thing that you could possibly do is conduct yourself differently, right? You conduct yourself in what it is that you feel is going to be most appropriate to try and handle that. And for me, it's about understanding my personal rights and freedoms and then conducting myself in a way that says, hey, can I get government as much out of my life as I can? If everybody did that, they would not have the control that they do. It's because people actually give them the control. They need to do something about them. That's giving them the control. And then if you're scared about it, it's even more control. All right, I fall in and out of that mindset often. You lost your chance to CBD. Now it's Putin's turn, and this time it's personal. I don't know what that means. Hey, UE, do you see Fed rate pushing 20% in the next year? The Fed funds rate? Liquidity, the stock market to buy bonds. Do you see Fed rates pushing 20% in the next year? No, I don't. What I see the Federal Reserve attempting to do is to try and raise the neutral interest rate, which I think they're having a very difficult time doing. However, if things go down the way a lot of people seem to think it does, where you have this massive tariff like plan or whatever, and all of a sudden the products inside of the United States become more expensive, and you have an inflationary pressure that starts to build again, which wouldn't surprise me. Like, I mean, I was predicting that there was going to be a turnaround of shortages again in the United States, but I thought it would have come more from the lack of manufacturing from around the world than it would necessarily be from, tariff inflictions. But, regardless of how it happens, if there is shortages at some point here in the United States, you're going to see the prices move up. And if you start seeing the prices move up, they might actually start to raise, like the prices moving up may actually start to raise the neutral interest rate, which is really important to understand because the Federal Reserve is attempting to get to neutral. Like that's where they would like to be, is neither too hot nor too cold. They're perfect, right? They're at that Goldilocks moment, so to speak. If they could be at neutral with a 2% interest, with low unemployment, or I'm sorry, a 2% inflation with low unemployment, I think that's really where the Federal Reserve would like to be. In there, this thing keeps slowly slipping. Anyway, I'm trying to pin it there. Stay. I think that's where the Federal Reserve would truly like to be, is somewhere at that neutral rate with low unemployment, with the 2% inflation. Now, how it is that they conduct themselves in order to get that, or what it is that occurs within the economy that allows them to position their Fed funds rate in order to achieve this sort of position, is anybody's guess, right? But to think that there is going to be higher prices coming into the future, that isn't necessarily out of the realms of possibility, whether it comes from just real shortages or if it comes from tariffs. Either way, there's going to be shortages happening within the United States and prices will be moving up. And if that does take place, the neutral interest rate will begin to rise. If that all happens, right? I mean, there's a lot of what ifs going into this, but if that does happen and the unemployment doesn't rise significantly, well, that will make the Federal Reserve's job that much easier to try and get that Fed funds rate to the neutral. Like that, again, I believe would be a benefit to the Federal Reserve. All right, moving on. Thank you, Uneducated Economist. Been following for several years and finally caught a live stream. Well, thank you, Joey. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a viewer of the channel for so many years. All right, school in the Philippines is taught in English. Yep, dude, oh my God, you cut energy prices, groceries, gas deliveries, etc. go down. Let us use our heads here. Okay, let me ask you something. Like, how much can you cut oil from right now? I mean, it's at $70 a barrel. Are you going to be able to cut oil much now? Like, this is like the number one like commodity for energy, right? Is like oil. We all drive it, eat it, I mean, it's just like, I mean, literally eat oil. It's kind of weird to think, but it's true, right? Like, they used to spread like Vaseline on toast. Ugh, all right. But this is literally the case. Is like oil is like like the most vital commodity known to man, and it sits at $70 a barrel. Like nobody was thanking Biden for that. They were like, "Hey, Biden, good job. Got oil at $70 a barrel." They didn't. They wanted to blame him for everything else, but they certainly didn't want to compliment him on that. And I don't give him credit for that. And I certainly didn't blame him when the prices shot up as high as they did. It's because I know better about the economy and what was going on within the shortages and banking industry and the supply chain breakdowns that's led me to believe that, man, prices are going to go back down to normal before they have a chance to actually do any kind of real significant quantitative tightening. And that's exactly what happened, right? I mean, barrel of oil is less than 50% of its all-time high. Lumber is less than 50, like not even close. It's like, a third of the all-time high. When I look at these things, people like they're like, man, we need cheaper groceries. And I was just like, well, okay, yeah, I get that part, right? But it's not exactly, easy to just go ahead and just make cheaper groceries. Look at the eggs, right? Eggs went from like what, $8 a dozen down to like, $2 a dozen. Why? Because the egg production here in the United States is super easy. But when you have production of food that takes place outside of this nation, that's very difficult to then keep in a very constant supply because it's dealt with global issues. Anything that has global issues attached to it is going to cause the prices to move up. Then on top of it, if you have global food issues, Well, then here in the United States, we might have it, but it's going to get expensive because the demand around the world is forcing that upon it. It's better to understand it for what it is than to say, hey, it's his fault, or we're just going to make it that way. How do you just go in and make it that way? To understand that the global food crisis that is manifesting itself around the world is driving the prices up is not something you're going to just easily solve, right? In fact, that's probably going to get worse. Demand for distillates is down, and the demand for polymers is rising. So the demand for some heavy crude is higher than the light sweet crude. The Fed is finished. I don't think so. I think I think the Fed is I think the Fed is planning on putting themselves in a position in which that they will end up being the issuer of not only the safe and liquid assets, or I'm sorry, the what am I trying to say here? Not only be the issuer of the liabilities, but taking on the safe and liquid assets of the US treasuries in a way that will then have the dollar itself being part of the stable coin, right? So you got the stable coins being backed by dollars, dollars backed by the US treasury debt. This will eventually start moving into a position in which that the Federal Reserve can then start buying the assets of foreign nations out there. Once they start buying the assets of the foreign nation and putting it on their balance sheet, they can issue out the dollars in that stable coin fashion, keeping the stable coin within that particular nation. Because if you have control over the stable coin, the wallets themselves, the central bank digital currency, if you have this sort of ability to keep that money in a particular location or control the direction in which that it moves, now you can start buying the assets, the safe and liquid assets, the debt of a foreign nation, put that on your balance sheet, put that dollars out there for the liabilities out there for them to use, and have that back ultimately being backed into stable coins, and the stable coins is now the main currency. This is how the Federal Reserve can lock themselves in permanently. Like, I don't know. I don't see how it could really go any other way. Honestly, like I don't like, and I look at it, it's either complete failure or they're moving into this. And this is how it's going to end up going down because this is the process that they're doing. Like it's happening now. It's just like, how long does it take before it finally gets there? I don't know, but they're definitely moving down this road. And considering that the Federal Reserve's charter doesn't exactly give them the ability to have a central bank digital currency, right, because issuing out currency directly from the Federal Reserve to the public is not something that they can do. A lot of people don't believe that, but that's the case. And they have to buy assets through the Treasury, or not through the Treasury. You have to buy the Treasuries through the primary dealers, which have already been purchased. So everything that the Federal Reserve is purchasing has already been purchased by the market. So understanding how the Federal Reserve operates, that they cannot just go and just create a central bank digital currency, they have to go through a process. And this process very much seems to me that if they could back the dollar with the assets of not only the United States Treasury, but that of foreign assets as well, and have those dollars basically being the backing for a stable coin, stable coins can now be used out there in commerce, and cash will be pulled out of the system. Everybody will be locked in. Why wouldn't nations just default? Why wouldn't nations just default on their US denominated debt? Okay, why don't they? Well, let's look at China right now, who is suffering from this exact issue with not only in their corporations, but even their own government debt that they have issued out is being questioned as whether or not they are going to pay it. This is China issuing out debt in US dollars. It doesn't have anything to do with the United States. Right? If they default on it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother the United States any. I mean, it might bother some people in the United States who might have bought into it, but this isn't like a United States issue. It doesn't have anything to do with our banks. It doesn't have anything to do with the corporations. It doesn't have anything to do with the government. It doesn't have anything to do with our people. Nothing. Right? This is China working on their own, saying, hey, we need to borrow US dollars. Here's a bond. Right? If they default on that, what will end up happening is that the people who had hold those bonds, whether it's corporations, investors, whatever, but let's just assume that it's the corporations of the Chinese country, right? These are Chinese corporations holding these Chinese bonds on their balance sheet. But these bonds are defaulting. They're like, hey, China's just like, oh, hey, man, we're not going to pay you in these dollars, by the way. Yeah, you are a corporation here within our own nation. And this is part of your balance sheet, the assets on your balance sheet, which is now starting to fall. Now your liabilities offset your balance sheet. You're going bankrupt. Your bonds that you have sold them to, they're suffering the same thing. This is the contagion effect that starts to take place. This is not what China wants. All right? They do not want a contagion effect to start happening. That's exactly what would happen if they just decided, let's just default on the bonds. All right? They can't. Right? They start doing that, and they're going to screw up their entire nation, and they fall into a defaulting deflationary spiral. My grandkids are gonna have shitloads of robots to work for them, so I don't care. Pile on the debt. Yeah, I mean, I guess. Any presidential effects are indirect. President of the U.S. doesn't make micro decisions. That's it. Help me understand how to avoid tax liability. I don't know. Find somebody who avoids taxes that can tell you about that. I don't know. All right. How true do you feel Creature from Jekyll Island is? I love that book. I absolutely love that book. The Creature from Jekyll Island is one of the few economic books that I've actually read beyond the Cantillon effect and a bunch of speeches and lectures and stuff like that I've gone through. But The Creature from Jekyll Island is probably one of the most eye-opening books to the Federal Reserve. Like, if you have no clue about this stuff whatsoever, you don't even realize the Federal Reserve is a private banking organization, reading The Creature from Jekyll Island will absolutely open your mind. Now, with that being said, and I've met G. Edward Griffin, like personally. We spoke on the same stage to the same audience. I mean, we sat right next to each other at the Silver Symposium. I went and had lunch with him at Hell's Kitchen. I mean, G. Edward Griffin is a super cool dude, right? I mean, mad respect for the guy. Now, with that being said, everybody has their own opinions and their own ideas of what it is that has taken place within this world. He has done an incredible amount of research. That guy knows more. He has forgotten more than I will ever know, right? I know that. I for sure. Now, with that being said, I think there's things that are stated within The Creature from Jekyll Island that, again, aren't necessarily untrue, but then might be a bit out of proportion and then misled, right? Not necessarily misleading you, but just misled in the idea of what it is that's going on. And again, I'm not trying to knock the book. I'm not trying to knock the author of it. I think all of it is absolute brilliant stuff. What I have learned from my research and everything else sometimes contradicts some of the things that are said in that book. Now, again, right or wrong, I don't know if I am or he is or whatever. All information should be taken in, and then you decipher whether or not it's going to be useful to you. There's nuggets of information everywhere that you look. So, with that being said, I encourage everybody to read G. Edward Griffin's Creature from Jekyll Island. Especially if you're just now trying to figure out what the hell the Federal Reserve even is, it's a great book to get a start. Right? I too listened, like when I was first getting started in economics, I listened when researching economics heavily listened to Peter Schiff. Over and over, I listened to that guy nonstop, every single thing that he had ever said, every news interview, every time he ever spoke or did a video or whatever. I listened to Peter Schiff intensely, right? I learned so much about monetary policy, not necessarily monetary policy, but monetary history, and how that monetary policy has incorporated into history. Again, the difference in it is that Peter Schiff, what is he? He's a gold salesman, right? So he's never going to say anything that is ever going to deter you from buying into the gold. So again, if you are a salesman, and I know, right, because I'm one, you're not going to say things that deter the customer from buying into your product. You will never say that, right? So as much awesome information that he has, there's just some stuff that he's not going to say, right? I mean, it's just not going to, because he's trying to sell his product. And so, again, it's just like, well, there's a limited, amount of information that you're going to get there. And, some of it is going to be absolute brilliance that comes out of it, because that's really what the guy is. He's been doing this a hell of a long time. Um, Jim Rogers. I like Jim Rogers. I think that guy is pretty smart. I like listening to a lot of Jim Rogers and stuff. But you guys know that I really don't listen to a whole lot of other economists out there, not regularly. Like, I will listen to them occasionally if there's something that pops up that I think is interesting. I want to get that point of view. But for the most part, I don't listen to any one economist anymore. I've dove off on my own. Like, I am trying to figure this thing out on my own, from my own research, coming together with my own ideas of what it is that I feel that's going on out there. And I really feel like I came up with, like, the credible threat theory, I think, is very not only accurate, right? Because, it's my theory. Right? So not only do I think it's really accurate, but then I also think it's really unique. I don't know a whole lot of other people who have taken on this idea, right? Most of the time, it's a regurgitation that people are doing of other people's work. Right? They just, like, just really just repeating something that somebody else said with their own opinion. I really feel that my information is very unique to me, and, what it is that I have found in with my research. And so, there's a few other guys out there who do some pretty unique stuff as far as their information goes. That's one of the reasons why I like Brent Johnson and Jeff Snyder so much. Again, two guys that I met personally, super cool dudes and super informative. And I have to really honestly say, Brent Johnson does a great presentation, like at the Rebel Capitalist event. Jeff Snyder, his information is really deep, and it is like I don't even know how to say it. It's almost to the point that it's hard to digest as he's doing it. It's like you should almost take it in like 10-minute shots. Like 10 minutes, okay, then think about some of the things that he said, take another 10 minutes, and then go that. Because when he blasts it out in an hour, it is just like, whoa, he just landed you with a lot of information, And so, but those guys they're unique in the sense that, they weren't necessarily believing that the dollar was on its way out, but actually have this belief, like I do, in which that the dollar is going to get stronger over time because of the sheer amount of debt, dollar denominated debt, that is out there. Like, again, this doesn't have anything to do with the United States. These are euro dollars. This is outside of the United States. And it's so massively big, nobody really even knows the size of it and how large this really is. If it ever came to a point in which that all this debt started to come due, it makes me wonder if the Fed could even print at a pace that is fast enough to cover all that debt. Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. Economic Fallacies by Thomas Sowell. Jeff Snyder goes hard in putting out content. Yeah, and that's the thing. And you can tell he's very passionate about his work, right? People who are passionate about it do it a lot. Like, they do it out there, not because they feel they have to, is because they want to. They want to get out there and do this because this is what they feel that they need in their life, Mark Faber. Yeah, I forgot about Mark Faber. Would be a good guest on the UE channel. Yeah, I like Mark Faber. One of the funniest things that I remember Mark Faber saying is that he says, because he has this really cool, they call him Dr. Doom, right? Because he has this, like, what is he? Austrian? Sweden? I don't know where he is. Anyway, I forget exactly what country he's from, but he has this really cool, like, heavy accent, right? That really just sounds like very ominous. And he says something about, like, you can stimulate the economy with hookers and beer. I'm doing my part, right? Yeah. That's what he says. He says stuff like that. He's so funny, right? But that's actually kind of true when you think about it, I mean, the beers and saws analogy, it's a little different, but kind of the same. Austrian. Yeah, that's what I thought. He thought he was Austrian. All right. Both my pops and I love Soul. He is a wise man. Well, right on, All Nighter. Well, with that, I might take a shot at listening to him. All right, not topic specific, but are you a guardian to a dog animal? Do I have a pet? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, I got the Luna dog. All right, hit the darn like button. Laugh out loud joke, but really do it. Yeah, go hit that like button, everybody. We got 337 people watching with 142 likes. Keep hitting that like button. Never heard a soul. Yeah, I to be honest with you, I mean I've heard, but I don't think I've ever really listened to anything. Let's see here. Do you study? Do you study economy, or where are you getting all this? Yes. Who said that? 36 boys. Is that what it says? Uh, 36 boys. Yeah, I study the economy. I study it every single day. Now, I take it back probably about 15 years ago is probably when I really started diving deep. Right? Before that, I just had an interest. Like I collected coins, and I kind of collected funny money. Like if I found $2 bills or a silver certificate or something like that, I would hold on to them, hold on to wheat pennies. So I was kind of like a coin collector, currency collector, but not really like a collector. I would just hold on to them. I just kind of keep them. But I was always had an interest in economics. Always had an interest in like well, politics and stuff like that, and I never really understood what was what like I never really understood anything, to be honest with you. I would sit there and watch CNBC, right? Like I would watch the Money Channel, and I could understand the words. Like I understood the definitions of the words that they were using, but it would just kind of fly past me. Like I didn't really retain or understand what it was that they were even talking about. Like I just like I couldn't give it any kind of real meaning to behind any of it. And I just remember it was like 2007, and going into 2008, we're going through this financial crisis. I had just bought a house, and like I'm losing my job. All kinds of stuff is happening. I'm like, what in the hell? All right. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching the TV, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And I'm listening to these guys speak, and one of them says, it's the mortgage backed securities. And I went, dunk. And I was just like, I went to my computer, right? I went to Google. I'm like, what's a mortgage backed security? So I'm reading up on it. I was just like, okay, so a bunch of them, and I'm reading about this thing, and I'm like, okay, so if I got this right, it looks like it's a bunch of mortgages, and if you like kind of took those mortgages and threw it into a box and then sold that box off, that's a mortgage-backed security. I mean, just to kind of simply say it. Okay, I think I get that. Yeah, I go back over to the TV, I turn it on. It says, guy says credit default swaps. I'm like, oh. I turn off the TV, I go back over. What's a credit default swap? Right. So I'm looking and I was like, okay, insurance policy on the mortgage-backed securities. Whoa, it's an insurance policy on these mortgage-backed securities? And all these houses are going under. Oh, now I'm starting to get it. Okay. What's fractional reserve banking? What's what? Right? And I just never stopped saying it. I never stopped saying what is. And so as I started diving deeper into this stuff, I started finding that I needed to learn more about like the Federal Reserve and the operations and the banking system and stuff like that. So I started reading some of the Fed speeches, and reading through a Fed speech when you have absolutely no clue about like what it is that the hell they're talking about, it is like reading a whole other language. It is like it doesn't make sense at all. There's nothing there that like, the words that they're using, the jargon, the lexicon, it's just like what in the hell, right? It's just like are they doing this on purpose so that we just simply don't understand what the hell is being said? So I start reading through these speeches, and it might take me a week, to get through one of these speeches. And then I would like find something in the speech I didn't understand. I would go and research that till I figured out what it is that they were talking about. And I started breaking these speeches down. And I was doing this on a regular basis. Pretty soon I got to the point where I could just read these speeches. I didn't have to think about what it was that they were trying to communicate. I understood what they were communicating. Like I understood the language now after doing this. And I thought, well, okay, I think I'm starting to get this a little bit better. The more I researched, the more I read, the more I started listening to other people, and the more I started like, kind of taking on my own theories, I started realizing, man, I think I know a little bit more about this stuff than I had even realized. And then as my channel took off, and I started doing the channel, and it took off and started getting noticed and getting invited to go to speaking engagements and talk about the lumber industry and talk about my understanding of economics. And I realized, holy crap, man. Like, I think I got this better than like a lot of people do. I mean, it even took going up on stage a few times to even like get it in my head. It was just like, dude, like you got to get the imposter syndrome out, man. You are doing this, man. This is like, you are there. Not there, but like going there, right? And you're in the zone there. So that's how I did it, man. I mean, I literally did it out of sheer curiosity. I never took a class. I never did anything like that. All right, we're losing people. Let's go. Let's get back into it here. We got 299 people watching, 160 likes. Go hit that like button, all of you guys who are still remaining here. Trump has some pretty interesting picks for jobs. RFK, Joel Sultan, etc. I wonder if they will last. Financial terms and their definitions was my first economics YouTube search. Yeah, right, Old Nighter? And that's the thing. Like, once you understand what it is that they are saying there, it's not that complicated. Like, you're like, okay, like, it takes a while to finally get it. But, like, once you get it, it's not that hard, right? To understand what it is that they are saying in these things. What's hard is building up the understanding of that. It's just like once you're there, it's like it's not that big of a deal. And you realize when you read this stuff, it was like they could communicate this in a way that people would understand it, but they choose not to because like even I have a tendency as I start to speak will not realize that I'm using a lot of the same type of language that the Federal Reserve uses. When you start talking about liquidity, what's funny about it is like there was a time when I didn't understand that they would switch between topics. But then a lot of times I thought they switched topics, but they were still talking about the same thing. They were talking about, going into the financials. And then they start talking about bonds. And then they're talking about securities. And then they start talking about treasuries. And I'm thinking, wow, what are they talking about? They're all talking about the same thing, right? That was the exact same thing. It is used different terms for it. And then next thing you know, you're thinking like, they have switched topics, but they really haven't. Or maybe they switched topics and you didn't realize, Oh, 1 second here, guys. Let me fire up this car just to make sure that it still runs. Oh, yeah, no problem. What can I not? There we go. All right, we'll let that run for just a second here. All right, Sultan be part of the USDA, which would be great, but might not want the gig. Yeah. Trump is our next commander-in-chief, and people should put some respect on his name. America has spoken. All right. What does it say, Walrus? The Sultan actually going to be part of the admin? I believe, yes, they make up a whole world around something they should not be making up. The bureaucracy around everything is the reason why everything costs as much as it does. Trash can man? Have you used AI to explain economics? No, I wouldn't use artificial intelligence for anything that I'm doing. What I am doing is like natural, right? It's me being me, it's being honest, it's being authentic, it's me being natural. Now, I met a group of guys who had a book for sale. They were like, hey man, we got this book. And I'm like, oh wow, man, that's cool. You wrote a book? I want to write a book. And they were like, yeah, AI wrote it. I'm like, what? And they were like, yeah, we just basically told what, said to write, the chapters, and then we went through and just kind of changed it around. But yeah, we didn't write any of this really. It was just, we had AI write the book. And then they put their name on it and sold it. And I'm like, that sucks. That sucks, man. Like that's not writing a book, man. Like, what I am doing is real and authentic, and that's what I want to bring to the people is real, authentic. If I had AI doing it, like, what I use AI for? To cut the shorts. Like, I'll take a video and I'll send it off to an AI editor that will cut the shorts out of my videos, right? Okay, so there is some use of AI that I think I could use. But for the most part, I'm not going to give up like what it is that I am doing here as far as delivering information to artificial intelligence. I'm not going to give that up because what I am doing, artificial intelligence can't do. I mean, they can come up with a video that looks like me, who sounds like me, who's spitting out stuff, but they're never going to come up with a video that does what I do. And that is come with the free thinking, jokes, being honest, screwing up, stuttering, making words up, whatever it is. That kind of stuff is really what is appealing to the people, is me being real. Right? They don't want AI. Nobody wants AI, right? I mean, there's cool AI pictures out there. You're like, oh, hey, that's cool. But then don't you really want to see the view for what it really is? Or do you want to see some generated picture that isn't real? Right? Everybody wants real. Hey, check it out. $10. Thank you so much from Tim Page. Thank you so much, bro. All right, $9.99. Thank you, Tim. How will it affect our economy having hopefully a peacetime president in office? Economic effect of non-interventionist president. I don't know what that's going to be like, right? And whether or not that's even going to happen. Like, we have to actually see what comes into the future. I was a time that I was listening. Here's the thing. I was listening to candidate Trump years ago, right? Doing an interview with Alex Jones. And I listened to this 45-minute interview with Donald Trump and Alex Jones. Donald Trump was going off, doing his thing. And he had two things to say, right? And now one of them really got me because one of the things that I am really into is personal freedom, right? And one of that is privacy. Considering how much that I put out there as far as like exposing myself out here on the internet, right? I try to keep my private life as private as I possibly can. And part of that is my communications with my wife. I use encrypted messaging service. Right? And again, this is like because I just really, I don't know how to say it, but like that is like one of the few positions in which that I just don't compromise on. Like, I like my privacy, right? Now, the other thing is that as hard as it is to like necessarily, I don't want to say like hard it is to admit, but I don't necessarily like promote it out there that I'm ultimately a pacifist. I don't want to see war. I don't want to see fighting. I don't want to see violence. I don't want to be part of that. I just don't agree with any of that stuff. All right. Now, again, I grew up in a military family. Most of my family is military. This is like, the life that I essentially grew up in. I'm not down for it. Right. I think there's other ways of dealing with things. But I also understand that's also part of the world. So it's not like I'm saying, hey, man, like we can't have this in our lives. I'm just not down for it. Donald Trump said two things. He said he was going to be the most surveilling president that the world had ever seen, and he was going to be the most warring president the world has ever seen. Now, I don't necessarily believe those were the outcomes that came from his administration or future, idea of the administration. All I'm saying is that's what he said. Right? That's what he said. And so when I hear about what it is that presidents say they're going to do, I want to see the actions first. I don't believe anything that they say. Not a single word. Not a single word. Right? That comes out of their mouth. Do I believe anything? Right? It's all about the actions. Once the actions have taken place, I'll look at that. Right? But up until then, all the hoopla, I'm not down for it. Right? I mean, it's just like there's so much theory, consideration, and what ifs and everything that goes on out there. It's very difficult to say, hey, this is the way the future is going to look, right? Especially if you start incorporating what ifs into it. However, I do see there's going to be some changes to the way things are done, and it's obvious that it's going to be that way. Like, it's obvious. What changes actually come and how the world ends up looking after the changes have occurred and how dramatic that's going to actually be is anybody's guess, really, right? So I would think that most people around the world would be more in fear of Donald Trump than they would be of Biden. Like, if that's kind of like, answering the question, like, I would imagine that the rest of the world out there feels like they could push Biden around. I don't think the rest of the world feels that they can push Trump around. But then again, I don't think that's really a big deal out there when it comes down to the grand scheme of things. Other people probably give it different meaning than that. Thank you, Tim, for that $10, man. I really appreciate you, brother. All right, he's sending encrypted messages because he is sending freaky, spicy stuff. I mean, I guess occasionally, yeah, whatever. I mean, the communication that, like, there was I remember this, right? A buddy of mine who was a computer tech, and he was what they refer to as white hat hackers, right? Like people who are trying to figure out how to get into a computer system that's locked up or whatever, or they got to figure out how to get around a program or something of that nature. And so he was like learning all these hacking skills, right? So in order to do this computer tech work that he wanted to do. And he was working with us at the time, like he worked at the lumberyard, right? And he was constantly messing with the computers there, right? And even the boss would have him working on stuff because he knew a lot about computers. But then he was doing some weird stuff, like, I don't know, just like it's hard to explain. It was just like I was just really suspicious of him, right? And I would use the computer, like the works Wi-Fi, for my cell phone, you know. And I remember one day he had said something that he had tried to hack, like I think it was like get into the Wi-Fi or something like that of the like grocery store or something, or the mini mart or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly where he was at. And he said he was getting close but couldn't quite do it. And I was just like, you were trying to hack them? And he was just like, I've hacked everybody I know. And I'm like, bro, I know you. And he was like, oh, I mean, no, not you guys. I haven't done that. And I'm like, dude, you just said you've hacked everybody you know. Like everybody you know. Are you reading my messages or what? Like, are you hacked into the Wi-Fi and like, are the messages going through there? I mean, are these encrypted? What the hell is going on? And I thought, because there was some things that he had just said that it was just like, man, I think you are reading my messages, right? And after that, I became very suspicious. And I'm like, okay, how do I encrypt my messages from now on? Because I don't want anything to do with, with this guy reading whatever it is that I'm talking about. So it was after that I got very like, nah, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I started using Telegram app. Like I found Telegram app right away. And I'm like, okay, so cool. So I'll start using Telegram, did end-to-end encryption with my wife. We learned how to use it. And I'm like, this is the app that we're going to use from now on. And that's the way it's been. So really, it was a buddy of mine that kind of, made me paranoid. And so that's where I started doing it. All right, a healthy marriage contains freaky, spicy, encryptable stuff, in my opinion. Well, damn right it does. I mean, shit, I've been married to my wife for 30 years. All right, beware of inside job. You can trust me. Telegram is decent. Yeah, and there's a few of them out there that I've used. I mean, Signal, Telegram, My Secure Chat. Secure Chat is just like, there's a few of them out there. Honey, lock and load it's 15 minutes. All right. Oh, that is so weird. Okay. Trump will continue to deregulate the banks. In what fashion? Like, I see the Federal Reserve doing a lot of issues within these banking systems and the financial and the Federal Reserve system itself. What part of that? Like, I mean, there's like certain banking conditions. Okay, I guess we'll have to just wait and see on it. But they have dealt with this and know what to expect. But he loves Russia. I don't know. All right, Trump's mouth was moving. I know he was lying too. All right. Honey, let's see here. AI told me, check, what is that? To backdoor my wife. She left me shortly after. All right. Money printer go burr. That's what I mean. All right. What time is it? It's got to be getting close here. Oh, yeah. All right. It's probably about another 10 minutes here, and then Freddie will pop out. So we go through all the comments? We did. All right. Thank you. Nobody's listening when I say Trump can't do course correction. I don't know if you can say that Trump is a peacetime president. I don't know if there's really ever like any kind of peacetime in existence anymore. Is there? I mean, is that really a thing? Hasn't the United States been at war on drugs like for, decades now? I mean, isn't that crazy? Like a war against the American people, the war on drugs, totally losing fight. All-nighter hider, I think Memory Man, I don't needs a hug. Uh-oh. All right. In short-term economy will boom again, I say. Unfortunately, the NSA has backdoors to everything and can easily read your encrypted messages. All right, well. Okay, I never felt so safe then. At least my buddy ain't reading them. All right, I don't like her, but what's your prediction for the future? The craziest thing that a government does is how to redistribute property after default. I happened to read a Trump tweet where he said we're 3 days from prosperity or terrible times. Well, it's either one or the other. Everyone needs a hug. Well, damn right, everyone needs a hug. Come here, buddy. I got you. You guys just really want to give. You guys are just in the hugging mood, I guess. All right. Well, we got anything else we want to cover? I'm thinking we're getting pretty close to the end here on the stream. We're an hour and 15 minutes into it. 297 people watching with 185 likes and $9 in super chats from awesome Tim Pike for supporting the Uneducated Economist. Thank you very much, Tim. War on drugs as a third-year-old only intensified my curiosity. Yeah. If corporations own the government, why don't libertarians complain more about corporations? Why do you think that? Like, I understand that corporations really run a lot of what's going on out here. But if you are a true libertarian, then you don't blame other people, right? You just start conducting yourself in a way that is what you feel is appropriate. And if everybody conducted themselves in what you feel is appropriate, then we wouldn't have many of the issues that we have. But because people don't do that, we end up having the issues that we have. Now, again, like, I don't want to say, like, if everybody thought like me, we would be fine, because that's what everybody says out there. What I'm trying to say is that if every single person acted independently, they're saying, no, man, this is my decision to make. This is my economy. This is my government, right? This is mine. And I take possession of it, and I take responsibility for it, and I'm not going to put the blame on other people out there, then we wouldn't be making decisions and voting for people that conduct themselves the way they do. The reason why we do it is because everybody puts this expectation out there saying, hey, my life is screwed up, you need to do something about it, and it's because of these other people that are doing it. Fix it. Right, and all this external goes out there, and then they try to do that, right? They're like, okay, well, let's, screw around with this because this is what the people are asking for. Yeah. Simon, how do you think the Democratic Party can realign themselves with the working class? How do I think the Democratic Party could realign themselves with the working class? I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't know, because I wouldn't theorize on any of that stuff. What I think is the working class should start working on themselves to figure out how it is that they can live independently and free of the parties out there. To say, man, you guys are not that important to me anymore, right? That's what I think that they should do. You put this expectation. How do we get the Democratic Party to align themselves? That's an expectation. That's an expectation of what they should be doing. I don't have that expectation. They suck. I would go right to them. I would take all the people, all the working class, go walk right up to the Democratic Party and say, you guys suck. You guys suck at this. We don't like you. We don't want you anymore. Same thing with the Republican Party. I've already said it to them. They screwed up by blackballing Ron Paul. They lost my trust a long time ago. I have no trust, zero trust for the Republican Party, none. And I don't have trust for the Democratic Party either because I don't have any trust for government. But I did have respect and belief in the Republican Party at one time. I was just like, hey man, I think you guys can, figure this thing out and make it right. And then when I saw what happened, I'm like, well, screw you too then. Screw you guys. Yeah, both of you guys, you all suck, All right. Hey, Crystal, thank you so much for the $1.99. That's my sister right there. Thank you, Crystal. I really appreciate you. Today, I see the skill of the workers are retiring, and I'm on the edge of crazy work schedule, keeping up with repays good. What is that? Repays good, but sorry, Eric, man, I'm a little lost on your comment there. My oldest son is almost 4 this month. I can't fathom him driving ever. Tariffs is insane. Will just piss off the world even more at us. Yeah, I mean, I think that the tariffs are, again, like, the tariffs wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact that the economic conditions have landed us where we are today. Like, they wouldn't even be tariffs at all if it wasn't for the underlying economic forces that are manifesting themselves up, considering what has happened over the last, few decades and hundreds of years, whatever. The manufacturing base has left the United States. Their best attempt to try and stop that from happening is the Tariff Act, subsidizing and tariffs, right? But it's only going to band-aid the problem, right? It's not going to fix it, because the problem that we are experiencing is the new money has poured in, separated the classes, because we have enjoyed a higher standard of living, and the new luxuries that come in is what the problem is. Just straight up, enjoying the new money is the problem. People's luxurious life is the problem. A higher standard of living is the problem. Not being a producer saver is the problem. Enjoying debt and toys is the problem. These things won't change. You might be able to change it some, right? And make it look a little different for a little bit. But ultimately, the underlying forces that are happening there are going to continue. Unless you stop the new money from pouring in, which there's no chance of that, right? The new money will come in. But unless you stop the new money from pouring in, you're going to find the problem getting worse. The inequality, right? Just straight up. That's all you have to look at. It is just the inequality of it. The idea that we can have a regular paying job and make it through this world is almost gone, right? It's almost non-existent. When I was a kid, I graduated high school with my wife. She went to Astoria. I was out at the little town in Napa, right? We graduated. The night that I graduated, we moved into an apartment together. She was already living in that apartment, working and going to school. Like, did you hear what we were doing? Like, is that possible today? To have 2 kids with part-time jobs, acquire an apartment, pay the insurance on their cars, the day they graduate high school, move into that apartment, continue, just move off right into life. There you go. Jobs, go for it. Boom. Making it. Weren't making it good, but we were making it, right? I can't see that happen. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm sure that it probably does happen in some parts of this country. But when I think about how hard people have to work to try and find an apartment that costs $2,300 a month, and my rent or my mortgage payment is that, right? I'm thinking, yeah, this isn't easy at all, right? This is gone far from easy. Let's check out this other one. Dear SX, thank you so much for the $2. Can we just give media class cheap loans in homes? The middle class cheap loans in homes. No. And the reason why you can't just do that, and I'm sorry, dear SX, because it sounds like a wonderful plan, but you're not going to be able to do that. Thank you for the $2. What's going to end up happening is that you have a supply demand imbalance that's happening right now, right? So you have all this demand, or you have all this demand for very little supply, causing the prices to go up. Okay, so here you have this extreme demand, little supply. So what you're going to do is give cheap loans to the demand. Demand goes up. Okay, so does that really work? If demand goes up, how does that work out on prices? Prices go up, right? Demand, supply, demand imbalances. So you can't support demand by giving them cheap loans. That's actually going to be counterintuitive and cause the problem to get worse. We've experienced that just recently. I mean, it's just like, I remember like Obama administration talking about, like, even the Clinton administration talking about giving cheap loans and everybody a chance at a home or something like that. Ridiculous, right? The problem has only gotten worse. So you can't add to the demand side of things by giving out cheap loans. That won't work. It'll cause the prices to move up because there's only a limited amount of supply. Okay, so let's set demand off to the side for just a minute. Let's just work on the supply side of things instead. And just say, okay, well, let's just build more houses for people. All right, well, let's think about that for just a minute, because, you can't just go and say, hey, go build more houses. I mean, you could say it all you want, but then there actually has to be people to build the house, right? I mean, it is, people just don't magically appear. If you pay, they will show up, right? So if you start to pay, then there will be people coming in who say, yes, I can build this house. Now, the people who are already building a house, well, there's only so many of them out there right now. And if you just start throwing a bunch of money at building houses, those people are going to start charging an extra higher price, right? So now here you have input costs going up, because not only is there a limited amount of people out there who actually build homes, but then you're going to start paying them a lot more because you have all this money that's starting to go into that particular direction. They will charge more for their products. So now here you have increased prices moving up, and you have more supply demand, right? Or demand for supply, meaning that the lumber industry out there, the window, door, siding, roofing, all these people, they're going to start getting a lot of demand going into their product. Again, what happens, right? Demand starts going up, prices start moving up, the input cost going into the house moves up, the price of the home moves up. How do you just do that? How do you just create a situation in which that you can just loan people a bunch of money and not have the house prices go up? How do you just throw a bunch of money at trying to provide more houses without causing the price of the input cost of the house to go up? It's like almost impossible. You can't do it, right? I mean, you can say it, right? You can say, hey, this is what we're going to do, but then the reality of the situation is going to play out much differently. Now, ultimately, what you need is a situation that provided more housing back in the day. Like, think about back in the day, what was taking place that got people into a home? Well, one, there was a hell of a lot less regulation, right? And I mean, I know that's a huge part that a lot of people say, right? If you lower the regulations, permitting costs, whatever, right? You start lowering the regulations, you make it easier for people to build. Okay, I can get that part. That's true. So regulations is one of it. Okay. The other one is that homes aren't built like they used to be, right? There's a lot more into it. They have to be completed a lot faster. Now, not saying that is the absolute case, right? Because you can stick built a home together, but you really have to know what you're doing, because they're not just simply put together like they were back in the day. So you do have to have some understanding of how building goes together. And there's not too many people, unless you're like, really good at, like, just learning or something like that, that you're going to be able to build a house. Like, you have to have the experience of building this house. So back in the day, like in the 80s, there used to be a time in which that a guy working at a grocery store or a gas station or something like that could buy a little piece of land, and then on his way home, stop at the lumber yard, pick up a few pieces of lumber, and build their house together over the course of the summer or even a year or something. And that was very common. Like, that's the way that people had done it. In fact, I could remember listening to people talk about how their grandfather built the house that they lived in, and that was a very common thing. People built their own homes all the time, like all the time. Neighbors would get together and help build it, right? You help build my house, I come over, help build your house. We both have a house. We do it fairly cheaply, and we're all singing Kumbaya and being happy about it, right? And so now this is not something that it exists in this day and age. So how is it that they're going to be providing all these houses for people when it's going to get more expensive to either lend them money to buy the house, causing the prices of the house go up, or the input cost going into the house to cause it to go up. When back in the day, people used to build their own house, which just doesn't happen anymore. So, like, where does it come from? Right? See, this is why the property owners and capitalists are going to separate themselves from everybody else. It's because if you're a property owner or a capitalist, you're in a position in which that nobody else is in. They're in a position in which that they are looking for government to do something about it because they don't have an investment going into the system and they don't own property. Property owners and capitalists separate themselves from everybody else. That's it. It's just like, start young, start early, figure out how to be a real estate investor, landlord, property owner of some sort. And if you're not going to do that, become the capitalist. That's the only way. Otherwise, you're going to be suffering under the consequences of what other people's decisions are and what you think that, what they think is best for you, which is even scarier. All right, we're getting close now. Thank you so much, dear SX, for the $2. All right. Bro, point is that there are enormous amounts of work and repairs. All right, here comes the Freddy. I'm going to read one more and then we're going to call it quits. All-nighter, Andrea, construction is just like a language. Once you are fluent, it's easy. Learning language really helps too. All righty, guys, thank you so much for being here. Come on in, bud. You can come in. Oh, he's coming. He's sitting in. You want to say hi to everybody? Hi. How was basketball? Good. Good? Grab another bottle of water from the back. Can you grab me one too? Yeah. Thank you. All right, Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.